In this video, we're going to be looking at the Model 700 again, except this time we're going to be looking at the Type PT, which is an addition to your Type P. It has a relay on it. This is the timer. Okay, it is a pneumatic style timer, which means that it uses air pressure to do its timing. It is rather hardy. It can take a pretty good lick, but it is very hard to set. So we're going to look at some of the functions, and then we're going to take this thing all the way down again. Now, the one thing that most people don't realize, and what I need y'all to wrap your heads around, is this actually has a Type P relay built in on the base. Okay, let's move this up where we'll get into focus. This is your regular Type P relay. Okay, now if you turn these things sideways and set them on their edge, you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the mounting base. This is the actual coil itself on both of the relays. Here are the instantaneous contacts on the relays, and then out here this is a clip-on, and there it is separate. So this is the timer as a unit. This is the timer separate from its control relay housing. So this will actually be piggybacked onto this timer by removing this screw and then taking this screw down in that hole, and then taking this screw here and this screw here going into these two holes and actually locking it in, and that's how you're going to get a timer. So those are the parts that we're working with, but we're going to take and look at it as a whole for right now. Okay, if you were to tilt this thing a little bit forward, you can actually see the top. Now, up here on the timing portion, you see 1, 2 contacts, and you can tell down inside the green, or inside the clear plastic area, I have a blue and I have a green. Okay, so I have a normally open and I have a normally closed, as we can tell by color. And then you can look up here at the back, I also have a normally closed, normally closed, normally open, normally open. Now, one thing that you must understand, the contacts in the back are instantaneous. They do not serve any time function. Remember, they are part of the relay itself. They still act exactly the same as they do on a normal relay. Therefore, the only timing contacts you have are the two that are up here at the front. They are actually built into the timer. These are the only two that are going to have their time delays. Okay? All right, so that being said, let's look at some of the ways that we're going to be adjusting the timer itself. All right, if you'll notice, there is a dial right here, okay? And inside that little clear area, there's a little red dot. That red dot is your time indicator. So right now, we're setting it right about 1 second for a time delay. All right, so if I have this thing set correctly, I can look down here, and right under here you see this little mark. It's a 1. Well, just like in digital readout, a 1 is going to signify an on condition, and a 0 is going to signify an off condition. So if you look up here at our little chart, 1 signifies on delay, a 0 signifies off delay. So right now this timer is set up for on delay. Now what that means is when I turn it on, the delay starts. So basically turning it on would be activating the coil. By pushing in the center screw head, I can simulate activating the coil. 1/1000, and then it clicks. So we're about 1 second, all right? To adjust the time, I'm going to use my fingers to wind that dot around, okay? Now if you'll notice, there is an area right here that goes gray in between the two areas, and then there's the kind of like what we used to refer to as the no smoking symbol. That red dot should never get inside this gray area. Okay? It should always remain in the white. So the maximum time setting that we're going to have is about 60 seconds. And then from this point all the way back to here is from 1 to 10 seconds, and then from 10 seconds to 60 seconds. And what you're doing is you're limiting airflow inside this bladder, which we'll take it apart and let you see it actually work. All right? So now, when we first had it, we had it somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 second. So I'm going to crank it up just a little bit more. We'll see if we can put it about halfway in the middle. All right, so that's about between 1 and 10. So now we're going to activate the timing contact, and let's see how it works. It should be around 5 seconds. You should hear a click. Okay, still around 3 seconds. Like I said, this is pneumatic, so it's not exact. So if you wanted to feather it in, you would have to just set and adjust it and then test it again. And there, we're a little closer to 5, but we're not quite there yet, okay? All right, so that's how you would adjust it. You can go in, you can go out. Just remember, do not take this red dot inside that gray area right here. All right, leave that as a no-go zone for that red dot. What'll happen is it will actually spring. There is a pin, that little piece of brass that you see down inside there is a needle point valve, okay? And that needle valve is going down in a housing, and it's either constricting or allowing air to flow in or out, okay? All right, so now we're going to take and look at the contacts themselves. To get to the contacts, it's roughly the same as on any other contact or any other relay that we're working with. You have to remove the 2 keeper screws at the front till they're easy to turn. Okay, and that normal cover comes off. Unlike a relay, it does have a keeper that will move back and forth, except this one just rotates out of the way, so we don't have to actually take the screw off to get it to do what we want it to. All right, there again, it's the same type of contact. They don't change, they're universal. So if I wanted to change this one to a normally open, I could do so by moving those screws around and then just plugging it back in, and then I'd have 2 normally opens. Okay, for the most part, all we're ever going to need is 1 normally open, 1 normally closed. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And get that put back together. Be sure you put the tab back down. Lock that back in place. Screw this down. Okay, remember that this is separate from the control relay, even though it's attached to it. So it has its own functions and its own screws and its own housing. All right, so now we're going to take this and change it from an on delay to an off delay. To do that, it's relatively simple. Okay, you're just going to remove 2 screws and take a bladder out. Now, with this one thing I do want you to look at is you see a Phillips head screw here, a Phillips head screw here. Okay, that is a number 1 Phillips head. I have never asked y'all to have a number 1 Phillips head in your bag. It's a number 2 Phillips and a 3/16 flat. Well, since you don't have that screwdriver, there's no sense in trying to remove those screws. However, you do have a 3/16 flat, which is located here, located here. So we're going to remove those. And again, take it out to where it's easy to turn. Okay. And we're going to remove the bladder. All right, now before I turn this over, I want you to look inside here. These are the fingers that are activated by this timer. Okay, what they're going to do is they're going to be pushed in and pushed out depending on how this thing's activated. All right, and so when we lock it in and then it activates, those are going to be pushed up and down by this bladder. All right, so I'm going to move this over to the side, bottom left of the screen. And we're going to take a look at the bladder. All right, so the bladder looks like that. All right, so this right here is a natural type rubber. It's very, very easy to puncture. So if you would pay attention when you're plugging this back into the hole that it goes in, because you can catch one of these sides and put a hole in it. Once it has a hole in the bladder is useless to us because it can't keep time anymore. All right, okay. This right here is the air filter. This is where we're pulling air in and out of. This has a needle valve in it, and we're going to take this thing all the way down to the bare essentials. But this is the probe that is used to keep time. So if I push this in, that's being activated, and then when I turn it loose, you can watch it travel, and it will travel all the way back out. That is how it's letting air in. Okay. the closer to the 0 on this side that I get, the faster the air is going to come in or come out and allow that thing to move a lot quicker. So right now we're set to about 5 seconds. So it should take about 5 seconds from pushing it in and letting it out until it hits all the way back out on the bottom side. Okay? All right, so now to make this thing off delay, this is how we had it in as an on delay with the no-go zone down on the bottom, toward the bottom. To make it an off delay, all we do is rotate that 180 degrees and we reinstall it. Now if you'll look down here on the bottom, I've gone from a 1 to a 0 now. Okay, so now it's saying that that condition is off. All right, so I'm going to reattach it. All right, so now the timing function has been reattached. To test it, I should be able to push this in, count to 5, because that's kind of what we have our time set to, and nothing should happen. We're doing an off delay, which means the delay does not start until we turn it off. So as soon as I turn it loose, there's my click. So now, once I turn it to its off condition, it will start the delay for however many seconds we have it set for, and then it will go back to its normal position. All right. To better illustrate this, what we're going to do is I'm going to attach a meter to my normally open contact, and we're going to do a check on both of them. So we're going to look at a normally open off delay and a normally open on delay, and then we'll do the same thing for an normally closed. We'll look at an on delay and an off delay for normally closed. All right, so bring in the same old meter, same trusty old meter. We'll bring this up. I'm going to bring it to continuity. I'm showing it as being open, which is a normally open. All right, so to activate this, I've got it set for 5 seconds, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this in. All right, now that's going to stay like that for as long as I hold this in. All right, so I've got it depressed. So now when I turn this loose, it should stay in this condition for 5 seconds because I've got it set for an off delay. Here we go. Turn it off, it's staying on. Click, it goes back to its off, or its open condition. So that's what we mean by off delay. The delay starts when we turn it off. So it's instantaneous activation as soon as the plunger is depressed, and then the delay starts when I take power away from it. I've removed power. 5 seconds later, it clicks off. Okay? All right, so now we're going to take and we're going to remove the bladder. And we're going to change this back over to an on delay and let you see exactly what it does on an on delay. All right. Now, as a case with an off delay, the delay starts when you turn it off. With an on delay, the delay starts when you turn it on. All right, so now we're set back up for on delay. We're still using a normally open contact, but now our timer's set for on. So as soon as I turn it on, the delay actually starts. Now, you have to leave this depressed to make it work properly. Okay, we'll try that one more time. Okay, so now we're set up for an on delay. For an on delay, what's going to happen is this is going to delay its activation. So you have to have this pressed in and leave it pressed in before it'll activate. All right? So if I just sit and push this in, nothing's going to happen if I let it go. Okay? And that's what a lot of students will sit there and do. They'll just sit there and push it in. Well, they last about 3 seconds and it's not working, so I'll try it again. Well, you got to hold it in for what the time is set for. It's going to stay off and start timing as soon as I push it in. So I should be able to hold it in for about 5 seconds, and then this should go to a closed condition. So there's our close in. We wait, it clicked, and now we've got our closed condition. As soon as I let it go after the close though, it opens it back up, which is why every time that I let this go, I'm actually resetting the time. So I have to have it in for the 5 seconds before it'll activate correctly. Okay? All right. So now we're going to do exactly the same setup, except this time we're going to do a normally closed. And we're going to turn that off. Okay, so now we're set up to do a normally closed on delay. All right, now if you'll notice, I've got this set for ohms, and right now we're showing 0. Reason being is because with it in continuity, it's going to drive us nuts running that beep all the time. So I'm just going to have you look at the screen. All right, so there again, I'm going to push this down and I'll let it back up, and I'll push it down and let it back up. Nothing's going to change until I hold that position for the set amount of time, which in this case is 5 seconds. All right, so for this one, I'm going to hit it, and there we go. We're going to a open condition from a closed condition. So we went to our OL. All right, so as soon as I turn it loose, it goes back to a closed condition, okay? And now we're gonna move over. Sorry, we've already done that one, so I'm gonna leave that there. Now we're gonna go to an delay. All right, so we're going to turn it 180 degrees, reinstall the bladder, screw it back down, and remember we're using the flathead screws and not the #1 Phillips head. If you have a #1 Phillips in your bag, get rid of it until you graduate. You'll never need it unless you're in instrumentation. Okay, all right, so now we have it set up for an off delay scenario with a normally closed. Again, I've got the beeper turned off just because it's going to be running the whole time. Y'all can watch the screen. All right, so now I'm going to turn this on. Okay, as long as I hold it in, it's going to remain in this condition. Now I'm going to let it go. It's going to stay in this condition for 5 seconds, and then it's going to click. And we're going to go back to a normally closed position. Okay? So there's not a lot to a pneumatic timer. It's set up to run exactly like that. The one thing that you do need to realize though, or remember, is there are 2 timed contacts and 4 instantaneous contacts on these 700 Allen Bradleys. Okay? Now, the coil is exactly the same. The coil is up here on top, here and here. So the position of the coil has not changed. You've still got 115, 120 at 60 Hertz. That's exactly the same as what we did on our Type P. So none of that has changed. All this down here, these 4 contacts and these 2 are exactly the same as a Type P relay. The only thing that is different is the addition of this. All right, so now we're going to get into the fun part. This is just the timing part of a Allen Bradley timer. As you can see, this one is bad, so we're going to actually take this thing apart. Now the parts that you can look at. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the bladder, and hopefully I can repair this one on the video so y'all can see what I actually have to go through when something gets messed up and it has to be repaired. Right now the bladder is not working properly, which means that I have to take the bladder completely apart. All right, so now I have the bladder removed. We don't need any other parts under here because this is the only one that we're going to be working with. All right, so we have our filter here. This is our depression deal, and it's not coming all the way out, which means it's not seated properly. All right, to get it to come apart, we've got to take the number 1 Phillips screw heads out, which means that we're going to actually pull the bladder apart. Now, for those of you who are wondering, well, what happens when I pull the bladder apart? Well, you're fixing to find out. This thing is also spring-loaded. It has different stuff inside of it that you need to be aware of that's going to come loose. Now, if you take one of these apart, I am going to try to make you repair it, even though I know it's a futile attempt, but you're going to get to try anyways. All right. So now we take this thing apart, and if you notice, it is missing some pieces. That's how we know this one doesn't work. There's supposed to be a retaining spring that goes in here that pushes this spring all the way back. So therefore, the bladder is actually seated properly and it's actually working correctly, but we don't have all the parts that are necessary to make it work. All right, so while we're doing that though, let's take this top part apart and take a look inside the geared housing. For all you mechanically inclined people, you're going to really enjoy this. The rest of us are just going to have to suffer through it. Alright, so inside here is our needle valve, okay? And it screws all the way in, it screws all the way out. Alright, it goes down into that hole, and that is what causes the valve to bleed in and bleed out. Now, what it does is it sits inside here, and this right here twists and turns to cause this little screw head right here to adjust itself in and out. It will actually slide in and slide out depending on how you have it seated. All right, and if it runs all the way up and all the way out, then this starts to stick out and you lose all of your adjustments. Okay, so we're going to try to get this one back the way it's supposed to be. We're going to run it all the way back in, and we're going to try to line it back up and get it to work properly. Alright, so to do so, you got to take this all the way out. Take that out. You have to seat the plunger back inside its housing right there. You have to take the screw in, take that gear off, put the keeper washer back on top, get that seated correctly, put the gear back in its housing. Okay, now comes the fun part. You've got to line all these gears back up. Okay, to do that, you have to get this to start on that gear head. Okay, and once you get that thing started, now you have to start screwing it down. All right, now you're going to have to catch lines on these gears and hope that you can get them to line up. And sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. go. We got lucky and got that one to line up. Okay, now that we've got it back in its housing where it needs to go, drop our screws back in. I'm not going to go into great detail about how this actually needs to be put back together and what it takes to get it back together. And the reason for that is y'all shouldn't be taking this thing apart to begin with. So I want you to leave them alone. And if you have one mess up, you need to let me know or let your instructor know so we can work on it and get it back to working order. Okay? All right, so there's the finished product. There's your bladder. Now, without that spring in there to cause this to push all the way out, this one will never work properly. That's why I took it apart. So if you go to start taking these out, that's what's going to happen. Your spring's going to pop out, and we're going to have a really large mess on our hands. So leave those alone. All right. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot to take apart in this. You can take this top off and get to the contacts. That's as far as I want y'all to be able to take them apart, so I'm not going any further than that on this video. If you have any questions referring or pertaining to how these things go apart and how they go back together down in detail, feel free to come talk to me outside of class, and we'll discuss it, and I may have some that you can work on if you want to try your hand at repairing them. And there's your 700 PT timer.